So, so I guess it comes down to when you're thinking about traveling on the road, when you're thinking about fear, the best thing we can do to be safe is to be prepared, is to think ahead, think about the worst case scenarios, and think about what we can do when that particular thing happens. What would happen if this particular thing happened? What would I do if somebody crashed through my windshield or somebody took a hammer and knocked out a window? What would I do? What would be my plan of action? What would I do if my alternator goes out and I'm out in the boonies? I'm 5 miles from the nearest town. Okay, let's talk about fear today. It's February the 23rd, and today is Van Life Update 54. Hope everyone's doing okay today. And since I need a topic, something to talk about today as a update, I thought we might talk about fear. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're sound asleep, and you get this knock on the window. And of course, it's either a security guard wanting you to move, or it could be someone who wants to rob you or, I don't know, hurt you in some way. Although that's rare. Most of the time it's a policeman or a security guard who wants you to move on. That's always a fear that we have, that infamous knock in the middle of the night. I remember I was parking one night at a casino parking lot, and this was early, probably the first month I had been on the road. I was parked at a casino up in Oklahoma, and I remember being awakened during the night. It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning, and there was a knock on the window, and it was a security guard. And basically, if you're nice and you're pleasant and you're respectful, you just move on. There's some things that we can do to avoid that kind of thing, and of course the first thing we look for is posted security in the parking lot wherever we're looking to camp for the night. You want to make sure that there's no security guards in place, and there will usually be some signage that says no overnight parking or something like that. So those are some things that we can certainly watch out for. And I think also maybe we want to park in places where other vehicles are parked. We don't want to stand out. We don't want to park in an isolated spot where it's just us. You want to be around some other vehicles that look like they belong there. So that's something else to think about. And our gut is a pretty good indicator of a spot, whether it's going to be safe or not. Let the instinct tell you if something doesn't feel right, if it feels off, doesn't feel safe, then just move on and keep looking for another spot. That's another thing that I often think about. Sometimes I'll pull into a spot. When I was traveling across the Southwest, I made it a habit to park at casino parking lots because a lot of times you had security, but they didn't mind you being there, especially if they had dedicated spaces for RVs. So there were a lot of casinos that you could park in and feel safe. And then there were others that would actually have security run you off. So it just depended on the spot and how friendly the casino was to overnight stay of people in their cars and their RVs and their vans. But one thing you can look for is the gut telling you whether that's going to be safe or not. If it feels like it's going to be a problem, then just get up and move on. So that's one fear, the fear of the infamous knock in the middle of the night. The other fear that I wrote down was, your basic maintenance problem. There's this fear that your alternator is going to break down and you're out in the boonies somewhere. You're going to have some sort of a mechanical breakdown and not be near town, not be near a mechanic, or not have access to a wrecker, or even have cell phone service. What would you do then if you broke down and you didn't have cell phone service? That would be a problem. Well, those are some things we need to think about. We need to be sure that we've got access to help if we need it. That means having roadside service in place, whether it be AAA, or I have Progressive insurance, and on my Progressive insurance, I think State Farm also has it, has roadside assistance. So you pay a little extra for that each month, but it's really necessary if you're going to be traveling. So be sure you have that roadside assistance in place, and also check your cell phone. Be sure you've got cell service, or you've got some way of contacting them and if you have a breakdown. Some other things you can do is probably pack some tools, become familiar with some of the basic breakdowns that you might have, whether it be a dead battery or a broken belt on an alternator or something like that. There are some things that you might just have to fix yourself, especially if you get caught and you don't have access to anybody helping you out. You're going to just have to do the best you can. Pack some tools. Become familiar with at least the basics of the things that can happen. Freezing pipes, heat stroke, flash floods, things that happen like that. We've got to watch the weather. Keep an eye on the weather. Know what it's going to be doing over the next 7 to 10 days. And, I try to avoid the cold weather because I don't like the cold weather. I don't want anything frozen. I don't want my pipes to freeze, and I don't want my feet to freeze. So I follow the sunny weather best I can. So you want to monitor those weather forecasts on a daily basis. You want to keep up with what's happening in the areas that you're traveling to. You should know ahead of time whether a place is going to be raining or snowing or have extreme heat, and plan accordingly. I mean, that's just common sense. And be willing to move. Be willing to change your location. If you've got plans to go to a certain location and you see the weather's turning bad, well, you need to probably make a change. We probably need to be willing to be flexible at that point. So have a plan B in mind. And as I say, I follow the seasons. I try to stay in the nice weather best I can, and try to avoid the extremes of heat and cold. I mean, it just makes sense that way. Well, what are the fears? Let's see. This fear is not necessarily a physical fear, but it's the fear of being alone and the fear of feeling like you're all by yourself, this feeling of loneliness. If you're traveling solo like I am, there are times when you feel like you're losing connection. There will be days that go by when you don't really speak to anybody. Now, there are some things we can do to avoid that, of course, and that is to stop off at a coffee shop and hang out, maybe attend some local church services on a Sunday, or find some meetups of other RVers, find some meetups of other campers and hang out and not be so much of a loner. Try to reach out and meet people. And you probably want to develop some sort of routine. I think the more chaotic my life gets, the more I follow a routine, the more I like to have a structure to my day. It helps because I know what's expected of me that particular day. So it's always good too to have a local membership at a chain of fitness stores, for example, fitness gyms. And if you've got a membership of a national membership of a national chain of gyms, you can always go to the fitness center and hang out. So there's things that you can do to stay connected to the human race and not feel like you're out there all alone. Of all the major fears that I think about, I guess the ones that I fear the most are the mechanical breakdowns, because I can handle, if someone knocks on my window, I can handle that situation. I've got a way to get out of it most of the time, because the way you park, the way you position yourself, you've always got an escape route, and you're prepared to handle anything that comes up. And if it's a police officer or a security guard, you just say I'm sorry and move on. That's usually good enough. The knock on the door doesn't really bother me as much as being caught in a situation where I've got a mechanical breakdown and I've got no access to help. If I'm out somewhere where I don't have access to road service or a mechanic, and that scares me the most. And that's why I want to be prepared and know as much as I can about the common things that will happen to a breakdown, and know how to make those repairs myself. I may take along some spare parts, maybe a spare battery would be a good idea. Why not? Go ahead and purchase an extra battery. If you have problems with an alternator, I don't know, what you can do with a broken belt. Maybe there's some things that we need to think about in terms of putting together some spare parts and learning how to make certain repairs. It would be a good question to go online and ask Mr. GPT what the common breakdowns are in terms of a vehicle that's on the road. Go into ChatGPT and type in a question, say you're traveling in a van and you may be off-road, you may be in the boonies. What are the common breakdowns that people have when they're not near a mechanic or near access to road service? What are the things that people have come across? And maybe give me 5 common breakdowns, and then maybe I can take that information and prepare for them. So I guess it comes down to, when you're thinking about traveling on the road, when you're thinking about fear, the best thing we can do to be safe is to be prepared, is to think ahead, think about the worst case scenarios, and think about what we can do when that particular thing happens. What would happen if this particular thing happened? What would I do if somebody crashed through my windshield, or somebody took a hammer and knocked out a window? What would I do? What would be my plan of action? What would I do if my alternator goes out and I'm out in the boonies? I'm 5 miles from the nearest town. What's my escape route? Probably being prepared is the best thing we can do. And then, for those of us who are believers in God and believers in Christ and believers in have faith and those kinds of things, I rest on the good Lord to save me in situations. I know He's looking out for me, and so I have faith in Him as well. And that brings me a lot of comfort to know that I've got someone on my side looking out for me, and who has helped me in the past, and whose hand I have seen work in my life, and I know that He is there to protect me as well. And I pray every day that He will give me a good day, and that He will help me and save me from situations that I may find myself in. So that's always a good thing too, is don't neglect the faith that you may or may not have. If you don't have that faith, then maybe you need to look for some, because you don't want to be in this thing alone.